wonderful natural gas market of a lifetime, and how do we capture it? I worked in the asset side of our business. 2 years ago, I was challenged by our management to work on the demand creation side of our business. And specifically, I'm going to talk to you about transportation and the role of natural gas in that space. And the good news, I haven't done it alone, so I'll name a few names and keep some of them quiet since they don't want to be named. But within EnCana, we've had an exceptional team, but I've been working externally across the country, talking to NGV America, the leading association for NGVs, talking with KOGA, talking with ANGA, America's Natural Gas Alliance, who has an NGV committee. I've been working with producers that have been exceptional: Chesapeake, Williams, Noble, Anadarko, Bill Barrett, Pioneer, Apache, QEP, working with Ensign Drilling. EnCana has 16 drilling rigs running on natural gas today in North America. 30% of our fleet is working on that. I've also been fortunate to team up with the American Gas Association, the LDCs, talking to them about getting back into the natural gas industry. So what I want to share with you is our learnings, but my interpretation. Okay, I think we're up. The first thing, we're a publicly traded company, so make sure you read that. Interesting. So on this graph, I'm going to do a little build here, but on the bottom is North America. We're looking at annually the number of NGVs in the world today, breaking it out by continent. And if you look at the North America, it's pretty much, what would you call that, a flat line? But if we look at everybody else, there's 13 million vehicles in North America running on natural gas, or in the world running on natural gas. We have about 110,000, 120,000 vehicles here in North America running on natural gas. So what's the message here? It can be done. It's being done elsewhere, and being done elsewhere in a big way, if you look at those graphs. Just a few summary bullet points over here on the right is really, there's 40 passenger cars, light-duty vehicles made in the world. We have one available to us in North America, but there are 40 made by the same OEMs around the world that make vehicles here today. And our group has been here to been to Detroit and talked to the OEMs for 2 years, begging them to come back into the market. And many of them are looking seriously at the market for light duty. You see a pickup truck downstairs. You see the Honda Civic, the only OEM-produced vehicle. Go down and take a look at it and talk to Chrysler about what's happening at Chrysler for NGVs since they got bought by Fiat. A couple of the other key things. In America, we really have done a great job on the medium-duty vehicles, the buses, the refuse trucks, transit. Those have been the key market that's been happening here. The CNG pump price around the world is 50 to 60% less than liquid fuel prices. That's how they're changing behavior around the world. They're taxing the dirtier fuels or giving a tax holiday to the cleaner fuels, and that's really made a change. I like this graph for a couple reasons. It's a pie chart, and I like to think about our transportation fuels as nutrition. I would look at this and say we have a pretty bad diet. After 20 years of research and deployment on the alternative fuel market, we have a 0.2% displacement of liquid petroleum fuels. We have consumed and continue to consume all of our fuels in the liquid petroleum market, gasoline and diesel. 72% of the oil that we consume in this country is in the transportation space, and about 38% of that we consume comes from OPEC. So we look at this pie chart on the left here, and we're looking at the whole domestic use of it. I put it in energy equivalents for the gas folks here in the room. We have about 194 billion gallons equivalent annually that we consume, which is equivalent to about 62 BCF a day if that was natural gas. And to the right, we just look at the Rocky Mountains. What's our portfolio? Well, you see it mimics pretty close to the rest of the country. Although we're 14% of the total consumption here in the Rocky Mountains of the U.S., we have a very similar profile. And again, put it at 27.7 billion gallons a year, and about 2.8 BCF a day equivalent is our consumption here in the Rocky Mountains. So what about that small slice? So we look at that small slice of the pie, and I like what Governor Ritter told us to think about abundance. It's not a zero-sum game. These fuels don't need to compete with each other. We need to compete in the full market of that 99.2% of liquid petroleum. And we don't need to compete with domestic oil. We're not talking about that. We're talking about, we would love to see more oil production, that would meet our needs here for domestic security. But these fuels are important as well. We need to grow all these fuels. So we look at this, we have 82% of our fuels on the left nationally are natural gas based, CNG, LNG, and LPG. They now call it autogas, formerly known AKA as propane. What we don't have on here, the data's not quite available from EIA yet, is biodiesel. Biodiesel market is growing. I think it's going to be an important one to put in this pie chart. We don't have it yet. I hope to see that come out this year. And we look to the right, and we see about 70% of our market here is natural gas products. Again, CNG, no LNG, and a large market here in our mountain states for propane. So a lot of opportunity for these fuels to grow into that 99.2% market share that we don't have. So let's look at this one other way. What does this transportation market look like by segment? If we segment the market a little bit. So this graph here is looking at it again on BCF a day, because we're talking to the natural gas crowd. And we look at the light duty, heavy duty, medium duty. We look at the marine, the shipping market, and we're looking at the rail market. And then we look at our own industry. And I think this is one of the important messages from our talk today. What do we do? What do we consume in this sector on gasoline and diesel? So we see the largest market, about 69% of that, in the light duty space. We have about 240 million vehicles registered in America. The average vehicle for light duty consumes about 600 gallons a year. There's a lot of vehicles consuming that. So that equates to about 42.4 BCF a day of gas equivalent consumption. A large market share. You look at the heavy duty. These are the Class 7 and Class 8 tractors, some of our larger transit buses. Again, consuming about 18% of the market, or about 11 BCF a day. We go into the medium duty market. This is some of our refuse trucks, our beer haulers. Everybody likes beer. Our beverage haulers. And they're about, we're talking here about 3.2 BCF a day. And then we see it all the way to the right. Then the upstream, we're about 1% of the fuel consumption in our operations. But our drilling rigs are big consumers of fuel, up to 2,000 gallons a day on average, with peak consumption rates, depending on our duty cycle, of 4,000 gallons of diesel a day. Great markets to convert to natural gas, albeit either LNG or field gas. So we can do our part too. So again, you look at the largest opportunity, you look at the world, that's where they're focused on. Biofuel vehicles for consumers. That's what the world is doing. You look at the U.S., and we're focusing on, or have focused on, the refuse and transit markets, dedicated natural gas vehicles for our municipalities. And we see these opportunities that we're now working on as the heavy-duty market. The folks that do regional haul and long haul are large consumers of fuel with less vehicles. So they asked, well, what could it look like? What could this displacement be for natural gas? So we did a simple transportation model here at EnCana to look at the opportunities. What does it mean? You try to go out there and look at the forecast, so you don't see many forecasts. Most of those forecasts are business as usual. Business as usual in North America is 200 million gallons a year of natural gas being consumed in the transportation sector. So what would it look like if we increased that? So the upper bar graph here is a graph of 3 different scenarios, a low, medium, and high. And simply the orange would be the low case, and we're looking about 3 BCF a day of fuel displacement or fuel consumption for transportation. The medium case is about 7 BCF a day. And then the upper case is 9 BCF a day. So the alarms shouldn't be going off, because we're really only talking about displacing 10% of the transportation market with natural gas, meaning there's a lot more room in that pie for other alternative fuels, whether it be propane, electric, and biofuels. We need all those fuels to have a more healthier diet in our transportation sector, so we're not addicted to just that one fuel and an unhealthy diet. So how do we participate in that, this industry, this group of folks? And I think we're seeing this happen just in the last 2 years through collaboration. I think we've seen some exceptional things happen just right here in Colorado, where producers are getting together, working with the Governor's Energy Office. 2 stations have been put on the western slope, one in Rifle, one in Grand Junction for CNG, by working together. Corridor development, well, trying to focus this not just on the hub and spoke, but connect those hubs up, right, and talk about corridors in the Rocky Mountain region, driving from LA to Miami, across I-10, looking at corridor development so the consumers of fuel have a choice where they can drive. New and returning participants. Returning participants would be the LDCs. Some of them have never left the game. and some are looking to get back into the game and looking at creative ways to help stimulate the market, not necessarily building the infrastructure, but working with their public utility commissions to look at different rate bases and ways to encourage the entrepreneurs to step up and build that infrastructure and support the vehicles. The vehicles themselves, we need to re-engage the OEMs, and we're seeing that happen day in and day out. You're going to see new announcements coming out here at the end of the year for 2012 vehicles and 2013 vehicles from our OEMs. We need to lead as our own companies by converting our own fleets, our own light-duty, medium-duty pickup trucks. And many of us, that list I've read, are actually doing that. Not only are they doing that, but they're also building stations to support that and going peer-to-peer, business-to-business, as well as public access to those stations in the communities where we live and we operate, giving back to that community with that abundant, clean-burning, domestic, and affordable fuel. The other part is, when I looked at the fleets, I talked about our drilling rigs. What about our pressure pumping services? What about the water haulers? What about the folks hauling our pipe? They, too, consume a lot of fuel out in our markets. And together, we can work on that sustainable package, that picture of E&P operations being more sustainable just by contributing to our fuel consumption. The last part here is really a level playing field. The government shouldn't pick winners when it comes to incentives. We need a level playing field for incentives and mandates. But those incentives and mandates need to be sustainable. They need to be there for the fleets. The fleets turn over their vehicles every 4 to 7 years. So they need to see a pathway on those incentives and mandates, as well as policies and initiatives that have some teeth. Well, what's the barriers? The other question to ask for the panel. Well, there's a lot of barriers and opportunities. And what we do know is the chicken and egg syndrome. Which comes first, the vehicles or the infrastructure? Well, it's a pretty simple thing. It's a duh moment. It's called coevolution. We need them both to go forward at the same time. So again, as an industry, this is how we can help. Convert our vehicles in our areas of operation, collaborate together, and help assist to support that infrastructure needed. There's very limited infrastructure in North America. We only have 944 stations for refueling. In the world, there's 18,000 stations for those 13 million vehicles. We have limited North American vehicles. We talked about the one OEM light-duty vehicle for consumers. So we need more of those. There's a high premium for these natural gas vehicles because they don't sell a lot of them. So they're trying to recover their R&D cost, their EPA certification cost, which can range anywhere from $200,000 upwards to $1 million to certify a vehicle, and they have to do it year after year on the same vehicle. It's a big expense. That's why the costs are high. We need to get more vehicles into the market and sell more of those vehicles. Investors. We need more investors to step forward. So the chart down at the bottom just kind of directionally tells you where we need to go. So my last slide, where are we? And I think this is the elements. I think the fundamentals you heard this morning, you'll hear throughout the next 2 days for the natural gas market is really never like it has been before, especially that translates into the transportation market. We have a 25-to-1 disparity on oil to natural gas. Oil is 68% of the cost of diesel and gasoline. At the city gate, CNG and LNG is roughly 38%. Natural gas, the feedstock, is 38% of the price of CNG and LNG at the pump. We can double the price of natural gas at the city gate and still equal the price of diesel and gasoline at the pump. A great opportunity. What I have found in the last 2 years is I think the industry, the E&P industry, the natural gas vehicle industry, even the OEMs are ready to stand and deliver on the natural gas economy. Really, the question is our politicians ready? Are our fleets ready? And are the consumers ready for the natural gas economy? I think we're ready as an industry. It's been exceptional. The OEMs, there's products worldwide that can be brought to this country and modified for our EPA standards and our safety standards. Not a problem. It's part of our domestic solution. We have a domestic fuel here that can contribute to that balanced diet. The other parts here is the new industry does create, this new natural gas industry, 3 BCF a day, 6 BCF a day, 9 BCF a day, does stimulate the economy. And it is an environmental choice fuel, one of the many we have. So that's the end of my comments.